Okay, so I want to ask you a question. And before I do, I want you to think about what is one of the major problems you're having inside of your life right now, or what is one of the biggest unwanted experiences you're going through right now inside of your life. Think of one specifically. Now I have a question for you. This is the question. If I told you that I could guarantee that I would solve that problem for you for $200, or I said I will solve that problem plus solve 5 other problems that you may not even be experiencing right now for $1,000, which ones would you choose? What offer would you choose? Would you choose the $200 offer that is guaranteed to solve that one problem? Or would you rather pay $1,000 that's also guaranteed to solve that one problem plus solving 5 other problems that you probably don't even have? If you're like most people, you probably chose to pay the $200 to solve that one problem, because what's the point of paying $800 extra to get info on solving problems you're not having, right? And that right there is exactly what we're talking about, because that is one of the biggest mistakes that people are making, is they're putting together monster courses that solve so many different problems when our audience actually mostly just wants one problem solved. And so inside this episode, we're going to dive deep into how do we actually create a program that almost sells itself just by the promise and the focus of the program. And sometimes it doesn't mean creating a signature course. So if that sounds interesting to you, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I don't think I've ever talked about, and it's something that I don't think enough people really talk about. And it has a lot to do with the course creation side of everything. The way you create a course, or what the course is about, or what you title it, or what the promise is, or the curriculum of the course or the program, it actually has a lot to do with how you sell it or how it is sold. And I think sometimes we get into this idea, and I know I did this when I first got into this industry, was like thinking I want to create the biggest, most in-depth course that is going to solve every problem that everyone's going to have. And so when I first got started in this industry, my first course, which I actually never ended up getting made, was for local business owners on how to market their business online. And I went to Vaughn's or Staples or somewhere, and I bought this huge notebook. And I remember spending like an entire week outlining the course, the videos and the modules and this and that and all this stuff that I'm going to include in the program. And I remember I might even still have the notebook, but I remember sitting there going through and mapping out everything. And I was going to teach them everything from like Google AdSense to like how to build a website and put their website online, how to run ads, how to do SEO, how to do the marketing. And I started to realize, looking back at it now, like I was trying to sell something to local business owners who probably didn't even have the time to master all of that anyways. Like they probably would have been better off. Just like focusing on one of those things at a time, or they would have been better off just hiring it out and letting the expert come in and do it. And I was probably going to sell it for like a couple $1,000s. Now, I never ended up making that course because if you know the history of my company, I got into local video instead of just local marketing. But I started off with local marketing, like doing websites for people and things like that. And that was the big course that I was going to sell. And I had mapped out everything. And I see a lot of people do this as well, where we take the entire library of things that we have, knowledge in our head, and we map it out into a course. Like, this is what the course should look like. This is what should be included in the course and in the program. I'm going to teach everyone everything that I know and create this big monster of a program. And sometimes we don't take into consideration like that big of a program can actually scare people away. And one of the biggest objections that I hear all the time is like, I don't have time. I don't have time to go through that. And so sometimes people just don't have the time or even the desire to go through these monster courses. And so what I find is that if you do have a monster course, it needs to be attached to a monster of a problem. But it also could be like a membership site where there isn't a linear fashion that they have to go through in order to get results. Like they can be getting results as they go or using things as they need it, not like they need to go through it. Like, for example, if I wanted to create a membership site and I had a course on every single thing you're ever going to need, like how to do a sales page, how to do a webinar, how to do ads, how to do this, that you need for an online business, that could be a membership because you don't need to go through the entire thing in order to see results. You just kind of log in because you have access to this huge library of all these mini courses. And then you just go through the elements that you need when you need it. And so you could do something like that as well. You could have this membership that just has a ton of different resources in it that people can use when they need to. But sometimes we don't need to create these big giant courses. And so when I go through, and actually it could be a disservice to you as well, because people are like, I don't need all of it, right? People might say, I don't need all of that. People might say, I only need a piece of that. Or they might go like, I don't have enough time for all of that. It's too much. And so even if someone does buy it, the chances that the majority of your students are going to finish and complete the program is pretty low. Like it's already hard enough to get people to completely do your program, even when it's like the best out there, or it's really good, where you spend a lot of time on crafting this really great product. It's already hard enough to get people to go through it after they buy it, let alone having this giant monstrosity of a program that people have to spend weeks going through in order to finally see the result. It's just a lot harder. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is like, it is okay to have a signature course. It's okay to have big programs. It's okay to have expensive, high ticket coaching programs and things like that. But what we really want to look at first when it comes to these things is really looking at the problems it solves. So instead of looking at this as what's all my knowledge, how much stuff can I put together? What does someone need? Let me just teach them everything I know and put it into a program. Instead of that, what we want to do is we want to start looking at what are the problems, the unwanted experiences that people are going through that I can solve through a course or a program. Now, I know that a lot of people who listen, maybe this is you, listen to podcasts, have heard me say that a million times before. And the reason why I'm saying it a million times before, and I'm saying it again, is because it is literally that important. Understanding the very specific, actual, real problem or unwanted experience that that person is going through, the thing that they don't want to deal with anymore. What that is specifically should guide what course you create. And so not only understanding what those problems are, but then taking it a step further and saying, okay, out of all these problems, which ones are the top 5 most painful? And then out of the top 5 most painful, which one of these big painful problems is relevant to the most amount of my audience? In other words, which one has the most people experiencing this problem? Like which problem is the one that everyone is dealing with that no one wants to deal with? And that can start to guide you to creating the perfect course. And honestly, sometimes we don't really need to do these big, huge, giant courses to make sales. In fact, like I said earlier, it can cost us a lot of time because those courses can take months to create, and then we don't have any sales to show for it, or it takes so long to create that we didn't do any marketing, so we have no audience. So now we have this big, beautiful, giant course, but then we don't have an audience to sell it to. We don't have anyone primed, or we don't have a wait list. We don't have any of these things, right? So it takes time. But the second thing that we have to take into consideration is that if we do a smaller program that is focused on a very small, specific problem, our course can get created a lot faster, quicker, and easier because it's just focusing on solving one thing. Then marketing becomes a lot easier as well because the marketing is all around this one thing. Our marketing almost by default becomes really relevant. And that's what I want you guys to understand is relevancy, becoming relevant to someone's situation, their thoughts, who they are, their experiences, their mistakes, the actions they're taking. Being relevant is what drives sales. So when we look beyond the typical sales language, right? Like we all know sales language, talk about benefits, talk about the transformation, don't talk about features, the basic marketing. So when we look beyond that, the next thing underneath that is relevancy. Is this tailored to the specific person who needs it? As far as language goes, identity goes, values go, beliefs go, all of these things create hyper amounts of relevancy, connection, making it feel like you're talking to them, directly for them. This is made for them. This will solve their specific situation. That's what starts to happen by default with our marketing when we understand the problems first and then we create the program. Because what a lot of people do is they put everything into this program and then they try to sell this giant program. And sometimes that program can solve 5 different major problems or goes into 5 different things, but the chances that your audience is going to need and want help with all 5 of those things sometimes isn't a deal. It's not a thing. So like when I look back at my first program that I created and I had all these things like SEO and Google AdWords and Facebook ads and all of this stuff, a local business owner may have just wanted to learn how to like drive more customers in from Facebook ads. Like they could have just been sitting there. And honestly, they could have just been sitting there saying like, the problem wasn't even around Facebook ads. The problem that I'm dealing with is I just need consistent people coming in. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to sell them this huge course on like SEO and AdWords and blah, 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 blah. When maybe they only wanted like an extra $5,000 a month. And I just needed to teach them how to run a really successful Facebook ad and boom, it's done, right? That's all they really needed. And so what's happening is a lot of people are creating toolboxes, right? You have this big giant toolbox that has your hammers in it. It has wrenches and it has screwdrivers and tape measures and all this stuff, all these tools. And you see someone walking down the street and you're trying to sell them this giant toolbox with all the stuff in there for $100. And they may be walking down the street, walking into Home Depot thinking, all I need is a screwdriver. And then here you are going like, I got the solution. Not only do I have the screwdriver, but I'm also going to help you with the hammer and the tape measure and this and that. And they're sitting there going like, why would I pay $100 and get all these extra things that I don't actually need when I can pay $10 and just get the one screwdriver that I need? Because what's going to happen is if someone comes up to them and goes like, hey, do you want this screwdriver? And you're sitting there for $10 and you're sitting there saying, well, I have a screwdriver, but I also have this leather thing and this hammer and all of this stuff in this big giant toolbox and it's $100. They're not going to buy from you. And so we actually see a trend right now with people with low ticket offers, smaller programs, multiple courses. And you can have a signature program, but usually what I'm seeing is like the signature programs sell really well when you have a giant audience or you have a really big customer base already that you can upsell into the signature product. That's where those are really coming in, or if you're going to do this big, huge launch. So when we do our big, huge launches, like our conversion rate is a lot higher than if I try to sell, like if I try to sell a $3,000 program from a single webinar without this big event, without the big energy in the Facebook group and all of this stuff and not spending $100,000 in ads and like all this stuff, right? Like when we do that, we can sell signature programs because it's a big ordeal. It's a lot of work. We're pushing really hard. We're going all out, right? But then if I just do a single webinar to sell it, the conversion rate's not the same. And we've tested this. It's just not the same. However, instead of saying, here's this big, huge, beautiful course on messaging, and I just spent 3 days teaching and educating and creating demand for it, instead of doing that, and then I want to sell something on a webinar, I go onto the webinar instead of trying to convince someone to buy this $3,000 program on a 60-minute webinar. Instead, if I just said, hey, you came on this webinar for this one specific problem on how to create content that converts. And I have a product that is literally 7 videos. It is going to show you exactly how to create every single content, 7 different types of content that convert literally almost every time, which I know does make sense. Literally almost every time. It's kind of funny actually. And I sell it for like $200, $300, $500. I'm going to make more money that way. I promise you that. I'm going to make more money on that single webinar selling something for $200 to $500 that solves one specific problem that's super easy to consume, easy to implement, than I will trying to sell a $3,000 product that is this big, huge thing. Now, the beautiful part is when we do that, we start to create all of these customers who are now in our ecosystem. And when you have more and more customers, you can sell them more and more things through upsells, upgrades, renewals, cross-selling into different products. Inside our business, I would say about half of the revenue actually comes from selling to our customers. There are campaigns, 6-figure campaigns that we did just this year to customers only. Like you wouldn't even have known we did this promo. If you were just watching us on social or paying attention to our ads, you wouldn't even know because it was just a campaign we did to our customers only. And so what we have to start looking at is, do I need this big, huge signature program? Does it really solve a very painful, big problem for people? Or would it be easier to create these like a smaller course, 2 or 3 of them that are just like $300, $200? That is the initial offer, right? That is the initial thing, and build out these courses. Or instead of selling one course for $2,000, you can sell 3 courses for $500 each, or whatever it may be, right? Break it up. Now, a couple of the things, because I know there might be some of you guys on the call today that are or on this podcast right now that are sort of sitting there going like, well, I already created my signature program. So there's some of you that could be doing that now. I already created my signature program. I've already have this big thing. What do I do now? Well, the thing is from a marketing perspective, you can still sell your signature program. That's not a problem. You can still do that. But the way in which you sell it can change. So I have this big, huge messaging program, right? That will fix your messaging. You guys all know it was NGM. We have also now have Built to Convert. And that's the messaging program. And one of the things that when I sell it, it takes like a 3-day live event all around messaging. And by the end of the 3rd day, people are like, yes, this is what I need. I want it, blah, 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 right? But if I was to sell it on a webinar, even though the price still would be $3,000, I don't need to sell it as a messaging program. So if someone came into the webinar because they want to learn how to create content that converts, great. I'll do a webinar on how to create content that converts. And then I will pitch the $3,000 program as the solution to the problem of creating content that's not converting. So let me say that again. Even though I have this big messaging program, if I want to try to sell it more on like a single webinar, because I don't have 3 days like I would normally in a big launch, I wouldn't sell it as a big giant messaging program. Like I might try and see how it does, but if it's not working, I might want to consider doing a webinar on just one of the problems that it solves, which is creating engaging content. So I do this webinar on how to create engaging content. And then at the very end, I just say, if you guys want engaging content, we have all these scripts, we have all these templates, we have this entire process. And then I could even position the rest of the program as bonuses. And I could say, and on top of that, anyone who does join, I'm going to give you access to our messaging program. I'm going to give you access to our sales page program, our offer program, this program, this program, this program that you can use anytime you want. All as free bonuses. But again, that is Built to Convert. Built to Convert has all of that stuff in it. But instead of just getting to the end and pitching what it actually is, which is this big giant course with all the stuff, I'm only pitching it as the solution to the problem of why they came into my funnel, my launch in the first place. So you could do that too, right? Again, if you aren't careful with it, if you're trying to sell your big signature, huge course and it's not selling, you could be trying to sell a motorcycle to someone who's trying to ride a bike. Like, teach me how to ride a bike. And you're like, hey, let me just teach you how to ride a motorcycle. Because if you can ride a motorcycle, you can definitely ride a bike. And they're just like, oh, I don't want to learn how to ride a motorcycle. I just want to learn how to ride a bike. So we have to be really careful with that. So the first thing is again, like I mentioned earlier, we have to find the problem. It could be a big or a small problem that someone's going through. And then you might want to consider creating courses around the problem that solve the problem. Like, especially if you're low ticket, if you're anything under $1,000, that's what we kind of want to do. The next thing is that if you do want to go with a big course, that's fine. You can sell it that way and try your best to do it. But if it's not selling, you may want to consider finding these micro problems that it solves, these micro problems that your course can solve, and build marketing funnels, webinars, smaller things around that, and pitch it as a solution to that and turn everything else into a bonus. Or one of the things we've also done in the past is you can take parts of your signature program, keep the signature program at 3,000, take like a module or two out of it, because the module or two is all they need to solve a very small problem, and then turn the module or two into a small product. You could do that too. You could say like, I have this $2,000 product. It's on health, 3 things: nutrition, emotional health, and physical health. And you might find that all of your audience is really focused on their body. And they're just like, I just want the physical health side of it. And you go, great. So I'm going to take these 4 modules that I have on physical health, and I'm going to put it into its own program. So it's called like physical health for whatever. And you can sell it for $500, $600 instead of the 2,000. And then all the other ones, the emotional health and the nutrition, you can turn those into smaller products for $700 also. And then now when someone buys one of them, you try to move them into the other ones. Or you can do a one-click upsell, say, hey, would you want to add these other 2 courses in there? I'll give you a discount, whatever it may be, right? So there's ways to do it. You could have the signature program. You can move the modules or the sections into their own smaller programs. But I'm telling you right now, at the end of the day, if you want to make more sales online, it is not about who can package up the most amount of knowledge and information. It is about who can actually create a program and offer it, which again, offer comes into this, offer it as the solution to that problem the best. Who can do that the best? Who can find out the most painful problem and create something that solves and fixes that specific problem? That's the person that's going to start winning. These big, huge programs with all the knowledge, people don't want those things unless they think that they need all of that in order to solve their biggest problem. That's the only reason why they're going to get it. So sometimes it's better and easier to find these smaller problems, create courses around problems, not around knowledge. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week with another one. Thank you for tuning in. If you have not left us a review on iTunes, please do so now. I love reading those reviews, and I'm grateful for every single one of you guys listening and leaving us a review. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. And I'll see you all next week. Take care.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.